Hey cosplayers, do you hate filling seams and gaps and trying to always have to try to do something more to get your piece to actually look smooth where you had to cut in or do darts or different things? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you the easiest way to hide all those seams without even needing any filler. If you guys are excited for this video, comment right now in the comments below with the words "no seams." All right? I'm super excited about this as well. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe and hit that bell notification and select all so you get notified of all of our cosplay quick tip clips when they come out every weekday. So you can stay on top of your game and cosplay like a boss. With that, let's go ahead and jump in, and I'm going to show you guys using the base pattern that we created in our last couple videos. Go back and check those out. We went through some proportions techniques, silhouetting technique to be able to get your base shapes accurate and the silhouette of them to look great. And then we also went through basically the whole process of how to do a complicated armor piece that sticks out further, how to build that out, how to pattern it, how to layer it, account for layers and different things. And this is the base piece that we had. So make sure to check those out, and then this will make more sense as to what we have here. So this is the base piece of a pauldron, right? Here like this, that sticks off of the body and everything like that. And we had all of these layer pieces that would go on top of this base piece in our pattern here, right? And what we did, if you remember, is I had us trace these layers onto this base piece. Even though this is all going to be one piece, I had these layers get traced onto here, and this is exactly why, is to be able to hide your seams without any filler. So normally, if you're just to take this and you're following our darts, how to make darts pattern the other day, or video the other day, you would take this and you'd try to figure out, okay, where can I, how flat can I make this? Where is it going to have spots that stick up? And then you might end up, putting some darts in here to relieve this pressure, everything like that. But then you might have some visible seams. So what I like to do, anytime I have any piece that has layers or anything like that, for example, with this Hiccup helmet, right? So it's got this eyepiece layer. It's got this whole kind of base helmet, right? Then it's got these fins back here. So what I did is I actually leveraged the fact that it had this faceplate piece that was going in on the helmet. And so instead of making my darts or anything right over here where I knew there wasn't going to be something to cover it up, I found a way to be able to cut right along here to be able to flatten my shape that then would get covered up by my layers. So it'll make more sense here in a second when I show you on the pauldron. But another example right here on the helmet here. So I actually did my cut my piece up right along here because I knew there was going to be another layer that came on here that covered up any kind of seam that might be created from that. So this is one of the beautiful things about creating your own patterns versus getting something like a Pepakura file or something like that that has just tons of seams and darts and all kinds of things to be able to get it to work. When you're doing it yourself, you can actually plan out where you can cut it to be able to flatten it. That will then allow you to be able to hide those seams completely so that it looks completely seamless. So with that, let's just jump in and take a look at this. So we've got these different layers, right? And we need to figure out, okay, where can we cut along this to be able to get it to lay flat, right? So right here we have a layer that's going to be going along here. So I think that we can, for this whole section, this curved area, we can probably cut along this line here, back to here, and then I think that whole section would lay flat. We'll do the same thing on this side since it's kind of mirrors that same idea. And then the biggest thing we're going to have left is just trying to figure out how do we handle this centerpiece here and this big complex curve that goes along here. So let's start by just doing those other two and then see what we're working with after that. So what you want to make sure to do is grab your Sharpie or marker, and we've already got kind of our line drawn there of where we're going to go, but what I want to do is create registration marks about every inch or so along that line that I plan on cutting along. Now the reason for doing this is that this helps us to know where those are going to line up, and when we transfer this onto our material, we're going to be able to use that to know how to glue it back together so we don't have a piece at the end that sticks out further than the other one because we didn't line it up correct, okay? Because there is some stretch and some play in foam and whatnot. So mark that up. We're going to cut along that line, and you'll see the pressure start to get released here in this. Now if you want to, you can cut just inside of that line towards that layer so that you're like guaranteed that it's not going to be showing up. But pretty much for the most part, if you cut right along that line, no one's going to notice a seam line right there. So, okay. So we got that one right. Now, that's going to lay pretty flat. Any curve that's left in this is minimal enough that with foam, you can press that curve into it. You don't need to try to do another dart for this. This lays flat enough that you'll be able to get the curve into the foam that you need to accommodate that. So now let's do that same thing on this other side. So once again, what do? Registration marks along the line. Very good. You guys are fast learners, catching on quick. Okay, marking them about every inch or so. Okay, cutting along that line. Now, obviously, every pattern, every piece is going to be different, so you kind of have to just look at it and say, hey, if I were to cut along this line or make something that goes along this layer area, would that alleviate the, the curve and be able to allow us to do that? So look, now it's significantly flatter, and we're still going to have this all in one piece that we can do, and then the seams that we will be having are going to be covered up. So we have one last bit here, right, that we need to try to figure out. Okay, so now doing our same technique we did to figure out where a dart would go, we're going to try to push this flat, and then we see, okay, starts to not be able to push flat right about here, right, where it starts to really bend up, and we can't really push it much more to get it flat. So we know that we need to do something in here to get this to flatten. What I think we'll be able to get away with is, because this isn't a layer here in the center, the layer is going along each of these edges, and the center is actually an open channel. So we don't want to do it right along the center because then we'll have a visible seam that's showing up on our base layer. But we could do it a little bit offset and cut along this layer line down to here, and I think that would relieve the pressure that we need. So once again, what do? We're going to find out the point that we're going to right here. I'm just going to kind of put a little dot so we know how far down we about need to go. And then I'm going to do our registration marks all along there. Okay. Cut along that line. And now, watch the magic happen. Okay. Now, one thing you want to make sure that you avoid is doing any kind of cut that's going to cause pieces to cross over each other, because that will be hard to then transfer onto your pattern. But there we go. So now this can lay flat enough. Put some, you're going to use your pattern notcher. You'll notch out you can also do this with just scissors, cut little triangles in here. So what we're doing is you'll sit there and do that with all of your pattern things. Pretend this is a full sheet of foam. You're going to lay your pattern out, put some, heavier things on it to kind of hold it down. Or I like to use, where'd they go? Up here. There we go. I like to use just sewing pins, and you can just pin it down all along to get it to lay nice and flat for you. And then you would just go through, trace your lines, and you'd come in and mark inside of those open spots so that those registration marks gets transferred on too. You're not going to cut the registration marks out on the foam like we did on the pattern. Those are just for reference now to be able to then take the two pieces and line up where those lines would meet, and that's where you need to glue it along that gap. So hopefully that makes sense for you guys, because now once we trace this onto the foam, it's going to be like this, and then you line those registration marks back up. That's going to put your curve back into it there, your curve back into it there, and your curve back into it there. And then when you layer on these pieces, it's going to cover up that seam completely. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys. I love this trick. I use it in basically every one of my patterns that I put out, because it just saves you so much time of not having to fill seams. Now there's some times where it's unavoidable, right? That you're gonna have to, something super smooth, there's not really any layers, you're gonna have to do it. And that's where you try to create using the dart technique, minimal darts, as few as you can, to be able to make sure that you have as few seams to fill as possible. And we'll have a video coming out soon on another technique for filling those gaps and seams, some good tips and tricks for that, some different materials you can use that work really well for those scenarios where you can't do this. But if at all possible, it's best to avoid having any visible seams to begin with, and then if you have to, you can fill them, and we'll have another video on that coming up soon. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. You guys are awesome. I love doing this. Let me know, what is your single greatest challenge when it comes to cosplay or working with EVA foam, and we'll hopefully be able to answer your question in an upcoming video. Thank you guys so much. Make sure to give this video a like if you liked it. Dislike it if you didn't. That's fine too. Share it if you know someone that it can help out, and we'll catch you in the next one. Cosplay on, my friends.